What is so attractive to making this sound?
It's fun. It's like a little kid with a really big toy.
Okay, it's fun, but it's so loud.
Why are you saying you don't like it?
Yeah, well, I like it.
No, come on, don't. He's lying to you people. He's lying.
Well, not.
Today we're talking about quite possibly one of the best singers to come out of the grunge era, Chris Cornell, best known as a lead singer of Soundgarden. Today we're going to be looking at where he lived when he lived in LA. Also, we're going to be looking at his first concert in Los Angeles, his last concert in Los Angeles, and where his final resting area is, right here in Hollywood. Plus a whole lot more. Let's go. Chris Cornell was born as Christopher John Boyle on July 20th, 1964. He was born in Seattle, Washington. He would take on his mother's maiden name many years after when his parents got a divorce. And that's when he became Chris Cornell. Like many great musicians before him, Chris Cornell learned how to play multiple instruments when he was young. Right around when he was 9, he learned how to play the piano, the guitar, and the drums. And it was also roughly around the age of 9 when Chris Cornell found an album collection in his neighbor's basement. And that album collection was a collection of Beatle records. It's not really clear to me if he stole them or not, but he did take them. And from 9 to about 12, 13 years old, that's all he listened to. Now this helped Chris Cornell out a lot because Chris Cornell as a child suffered with heavy anxiety. He had heavy social anxiety, and listening to these records took him off into this other world. It was very therapeutic for him. Unfortunately for him, his anxiety increased around the time he was 12 years old. It was so severe that he turned to alcohol and drugs. This led him to quitting high school. It was around the age of 15 is when he decided to start thinking more about music and back off on the drugs. And this led him back to music. So around 18 or 19, Cornell would join a band called Shemp. They were a cover band in Seattle, Washington. And it was in this band where he met two future Soundgarden members, Hiro Yamamoto, which became the bass player, and Kim Theo, which became the lead guitar player. Now the Shemps broke up, and by 1984, they would form Soundgarden. Yamamoto on bass, Kim Theo on guitar, and for a short stint, it was Chris Cornell on vocals and drums. And it was at some point when they hired Scott Sundquist to come in and play the drums. This was so Chris Cornell could focus on his vocals. And he also played rhythm guitar quite a bit in the band. It was around 1987 when Soundgarden was signed to a small label known as Sub Pop. Now Sub Pop was a small label company that would sign on anybody in the Seattle area that was a rock band, say they were kind of like the start of the grunge movement. Now on Sub Pop's label, there were other grunge bands such as Nirvana. Now through this label, they were able to put out a couple LPs, shop around, and get gigs.
And a man with spoons. Yes. And so you just saw this guy and you decided to write a song about him?
Well, he's been around for a while, and actually the song came about from, well, it's a long story. Do you guys want to hear it?
Not really.
I don't want
Can you sum it up real quick?
I don't want to tell it.
You spent a lot of time at the San Diego Zoo, right?
I've only been there once. It was depressing.
Is what used to be called Club Lingerie. Now this was one of the hotter clubs in LA outside of the Whiskey A Go Go. This club had many big acts of the time. It had Red Hot Chili Peppers, Weezer, Jane's Addiction, Ramones, Hole, all kinds of up-and-coming bands of the time. Now Soundgarden would play here on February 11th, 1988, just 6 months before they came out with their first debut album, Ultra Mega OK. Now this would be Soundgarden's first place that they would ever play at in LA. Not the first place they played at, they obviously started in Seattle, but first LA venue. Now needless to say, Soundgarden was one of the bigger bands to be up and coming around this time. And when they played here, there was truly a new sound bubbling up into the music industry. Now unfortunately, Club Lingerie closed down in 1995 due to growing violence in the area. They had some music acts that kind of brought violence, and it seemed that they were never able to recover, and they completely closed shop. Now today it's Warwick. I really like the stripes on the side of this building, but if you wanted to come out here and check it out for yourself here in Los Angeles, 6507 Sunset Boulevard. There's not a lot to look at, but it's got a lot of rock and roll history right here. Now, it was about a year after Soundgarden would play here at Club Lingerie that something else big would happen for them. And we're gonna go over there and check that out right now. Let's go. Behind me here is the Charlie Chaplin studio. Now the Charlie Chaplin studio was built in 1917. Of course, this could be a whole nother video on its own, but that's not what we're here for. On the side note, it's now currently the Jim Henson studio. But between the date of 1966 and 1999, it was A&M Records. This was the record company that would sign Soundgarden. Now Soundgarden was the first band out of the grunge movement to actually sign to a major label. Now this is around the time in 1989 Soundgarden would come out with their second album, Louder Than Love. This was also around the time Soundgarden got a new drummer, Matt Cameron. Now Matt Cameron would be the drummer for all the other albums from here on out. It was shortly after the tour of Louder Than Love that Yamamoto would quit the band, and he would be replaced with Jason Everman. Now Jason Everman was the guitar player for Nirvana for a stint, and for a very short time he was also in Soundgarden. He was shortly fired after a tour, and he was replaced by Ben Shepherd. Ben Shepherd from here on out would be the bass player for all other Soundgarden albums. Soundgarden would go on to record 4 more albums. Bad Motor Finger in 1991, Super Unknown in 1994, Down on the Upside in 1996, and King Animal in 2012 with A&M Records. Now a little side note, A&M Records is where they recorded We Are the World with Michael Jackson and a bunch of other musicians back in the 80s. And I believe it was this building right here behind me where they filmed the video. Just a little interesting side note.
Things you could write songs about, like lost love, heartache, fast cars, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, politics, war, you know, abortions, that kind of thing that everyone writes songs about. It for me, writing songs about someone like Spoonman is kind of more interesting, more fun.
By 1997, the band started seeing some angst between each other. They were seeing some creative differences. Some people wanted to go into a harder sound, more of a metal sound kind of thing, and some people wanted to take it down a notch and go into more of a mellow thing. There was some huge creative differences going on in the band. So by 1997, the band was a bit exhausted from all the touring, and they called it quits. Now after they called it quits, Chris Cornell would go on his own. He would do a bunch of solo projects. He in fact started his solo career around this time. And that would last for quite some time. Now he did some solo stuff before this. He did Temple of the Dog with Eddie Vedder and a couple other people from Pearl Jam. By 2001, Chris Cornell would join a band called Audioslave. Now, Audioslave was an interesting mix. It was Chris Cornell with some of the members of Rage Against the Machine. It was also said around this time that Chris Cornell was starting to go through some depressing feelings at the time. When they were recording the first album of Audioslave, he had some pretty heavy depression kind of overtake him. So it was kind of all of his old demons kind of resurfacing. Now way up here on top of a hill somewhere in Beverly Hills, I am now at Chris Cornell's house. It's over here on Ellison and Arby Drive. This house is over 5,800 square feet. It's a very modern looking house. And this is where Chris Cornell would move to California. And he moved here in 2005 with his wife Vicky and his 3 kids. Now, 2 important career changes would happen to Chris Cornell while he was living here. One was Audioslave broke up in 2007, and in 2010 he got back together with Soundgarden. Also, Soundgarden would come out with their 6th album, King Animal, in 2012, while Chris Cornell was still living here. Now, Chris Cornell lived here for 8 years, 2005 to 2015. Cornell and his family would move out to Miami, Florida. Just a little side note, this house was something like $4 million when Chris Cornell bought this. They sold it for a little over $5 million, and I believe these days it's something like $10 million. It was around this time in his adult life that Chris Cornell had to be on medication, doctor prescribed prescriptions. He was doing this because he was still dealing with a lot of anxiety and a shit ton of depression. Now in 2014, that didn't stop Chris Cornell from rocking out. Right now, I'm at the Hollywood Bowl, and this is where Soundgarden would play a concert with 9 Inch Nails. I'm a little out of breath because I'm at the very tippy top level you can get to in the stadium here at the Hollywood Bowl. And I'm only imagining looking down at these seats and imagining the eager fans waiting for one of the bands to go up and play. I've been there many times, not here specifically, but I've been to thousands of concerts, and I know the feeling, anticipating your favorite bands hitting that stage. This is the last place Chris Cornell and the boys would have their last show in Los Angeles as a collective Soundgarden. Man, I would have loved to seen this. Top it off with your favorite bands playing on stage. You get this amazing view. And in fact, you get a really nice shot of the Hollywood sign. I'm gonna have to come back for pizza and some barbecue in the future. But for now, we need to go to our last and final stop. Let's go. In 2017, Soundgarden would go on a tour, and they were touring through Detroit. One of the last shows that they would do, fans were kind of complex by how Chris Cornell just didn't seem right on stage. He seemed out of it. He wasn't quite hitting the notes, the beautiful notes that he could usually hit. He wasn't, he was forgetting the words. Just his all-around performance wasn't going very well. That night, everybody goes back to their hotel rooms. Chris Cornell is in his own hotel room. Now mind you, Chris Cornell is still suffering with depression. Sometime throughout the night, Chris Cornell and his wife Vicky would talk on the phone, and Vicky could hear something that wasn't quite right and was kind of afraid at that time. After they hung up, she called the front desk after an hour or so to have someone check up on Chris Cornell. They tried to check up on him, but apparently his room was latched, and they couldn't. They knocked on the door. They got no response. They couldn't get inside. From there, Vicky asked one of Cornell's bodyguards to go down there and tell them that they need to open the door. They said they couldn't do that. So Cornell's wife from there instructed the bodyguard to get into that room any way you can. Break down the door, whatever you gotta do. The bodyguard goes back up there, pounds on the door, no answer, busts in the door. The bodyguard said that as he busted in the door, it didn't all the way open, of course, but it was enough to see Chris Cornell's legs sticking out of the bathroom. Now the authorities were immediately called, and when the paramedics got there, Chris Cornell was dead. Passed away on May 18th, 2017. And the autopsy came out with that Cornell died from suicide. It was said that he hanged himself in the hotel bathroom. He was only 52 and he still had a beautiful voice. So right now I'm at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and this is where Chris Cornell's ashes were buried. His headstone says, "Voice of our generation and an artist for all time, Chris Cornell, 1964 to 2017, beloved husband and father." Vicky would end up taking the doctor that prescribed the medicine to Chris Cornell to court. She felt like the medicine that the doctor prescribed to her husband was giving him suicidal thoughts, and she believes that's why Chris Cornell took his own life. I think this is a beautiful memorial. The fact that they made a garden, kind of playing off of the word Soundgarden, I suppose, but look how beautiful this is. Now another interesting thing that I found during my research, that I didn't really know this, but Chris Cornell was friends with John Cummings, aka Johnny Ramone. And the reason why I bring this up is because there's Johnny Ramone, and right there, it's just at that little garden, you can see yonder there, it's Chris Cornell. Rest in peace, Chris Cornell. You will always be remembered. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, you're also gonna like that video over there. If you like this video, please go check out that video over there. I put a lot of time in these. I would appreciate it. And also, give me a thumbs up. Why not? Take care, guys, and I'll see you over there.